Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Request you to all please settle down. We'll start the session. We have about 30 minutes. You know, it's a tightly planned session. Welcome, everyone. Let me start by welcoming the minister has in Prime Minister Modi's cabinet. It's a very, very large, significant responsibility given the expansive work that he has. Let me start by asking you, sir, this is a mix of Indian and global audience, young and established businesses and stakeholders from governments. What, in your opinion, is the big story behind India's growth, and what do you think is driving our economic momentum?
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Friends, very good morning. Those of you who are present here, my namaste to you, and those who are joined virtually, whichever geography you are listening, please translate using whichever AI tool you are using these days, and accept my greetings. Mr. Bhatia, I think the whole economic growth story that we are seeing today is a very well thought through story. The four pillars on which the economic momentum is built are very clearly thought through, very focused execution has happened. The first pillar is the investment in physical, digital, and social infrastructure. The second pillar is huge focus on making sure that the growth is inclusive. The third big pillar of our economic policy and Prime Minister's vision is to make sure that manufacturing gains ground. Something which has remained dormant for 60 years comes back in a very systematic way. Both the brick and mortar and the modern manufacturing, both the labor intensive as well as high-end manufacturing. So lots and lots of focus on manufacturing. And the fourth big pillar on which this economic momentum is built is huge amount of simplification. More than 1,500 archaic laws have been removed from the statute book. More than 40,000 compliances have either been removed or simplified. So all the four pillars, there has been consistent work over the last 10 years. The work is giving us the result despite the shock of COVID and the shock of conflict in Ukraine, Russia. Despite all that, our economy is today growing at a consistent clip, at a very good rate, and today we can say with 95% confidence interval that for the next 10 years, India will continue to grow at 6 to 8% consistent growth rate, and that can be said with a very high level of confidence because practically everything that needs to be put in the foundation for this growth has been put in, the results are visible, and there is a consistency in the growth. In the coming 5 years of Prime Minister Modi ji's third term, our focus will be to reinforce all these four pillars in a significant way.
Thank you. So you talked about a decade, and then we have a 47 plan, 100 years of independence, Amrit Kal, the Honorable Prime Minister has declared. Over the coming years, as we transition from the current state to being the third largest economy, which are the international partnerships and actors that are most important to our growth? And who are the cluster of global stakeholders from governments and private sector that we must reach out to actively in the next 5 years and the next 5 years?
Listen, we have today a global scenario, a global geopolitical scenario in which many of the old structures are getting revised. This is a time for consolidating and repositioning our country in a way which actually has been demonstrated if you look at the journey of last 10 years. Our Prime Minister's, the way he has conducted the foreign policy, India has today emerged as a developed, as a trusted and a developing geography where people believe that yes, India is a good partner. India is a trusted partner. I can give multiple examples. Examples of supply chain are all known to you. We have Apple manufacturing here in India, Samsung manufacturing here in India. We have multiple consumer-facing brands in the traditional industry who have ramped up their production in India. So Make in India is a big success. What the bigger reflection of the trust is in developing critical technologies. Now that's a big change which has happened. From being a receiver of previous generation technology through TOT agreements, today India is viewed as a country which can be a co-creator of technology, which can be a co-developer of technology. For example, we have today MOUs with USA, with Japan, with Europe for developing semiconductor technologies with newer applications in quantum, with newer applications in newer applications in telecom. So the way we are looking at this is, here is a trusted geography, here is a large talent pool, here is a tested past which can be verified by anybody. So the world, we are open to the world, we are open to new ideas. So come here, innovate here for India, for the world. And the second part of your question, we believe that government and the private sector must work in unison, must work in harmony. We have developed a very unique public-private partnership model. For example, the entire payment, digital payment that you see, it's a classic case of a public-private partnership where the public funds were used to create a platform. That platform, which is owned by NPCI, National Payment Corporation of India, that platform is open to everybody. It's open access. So startups have joined, 400 banks have joined, insurance companies have joined, mutual funds have joined, and a large base of about 400 million users have joined. So imagine the power of a platform like this. So we believe in public-private partnerships, whether it is development of the telecom stack, development of the digital stack, development of semiconductors, everywhere we are looking at public-private partnerships.
The Prime Minister has spoken about Viksit Bharat, has spoken about the idea of the next 25 years being our golden period. One of our big challenges as investors has been taxation in India, but the GST has been a great success in economic terms. Also, the collection is very buoyant. Our physical infrastructure that seems to rapidly connect the country is another big story, including the work that Railways is doing. What is this transformation over the last 5-7 years that is underway? How do you kind of put this together for an international audience? How do we explain this to them?
For economic growth, certain basic principles are known to everybody. One of the fundamental principles is that sustained economic growth happens when the productivity increases. So productivity improvement is one of the fundamental structures of any economic growth thinking. When we look at the factors which will improve productivity, the two major factors which come into that, actually three, are first is the physical and digital infrastructure. The second is the focus on education and skilling. And third is the focus on innovation and development. So Prime Minister Modi has given a very clear focus on all these three elements which are improving the productivity of the economy. Now the thinking which I can share with you very candidly, that our Prime Minister's thinking is that we should always think of at least 15-20 years ahead. Whether we are building a railway system, whether we are building a highway system, whether we are investing in semiconductor industry, whichever sector you see, his thinking is that we should think of at least 15-20 years ahead. Ideally, we should have a clear vision path for 25 years, break that down into planning periods of 5 years each, and then execute. That's the way he thinks. That is reflected in many of the programs that Prime Minister has launched, whether it is Make in India, whether it is Skill India, whether it is new education policy. So to the international audience, I would like to convey the message that whatever our Prime Minister is doing today is fundamentally going to improve the productivity of the economy, fundamentally going to lay a foundation for long-term growth. So when I say at least till next 10 years, we can see 6 to 8% growth rate with 95% confidence interval. The foundation which is getting laid today will give us a significantly longer period of high growth and moderate and under control inflation. That's what is entire planning is. It's also a lot of focus on human resources through the education policy, through investments in setting up new IITs, setting up new aims, focus on the healthcare sector through the largest health insurance program in the world, Ayushman Bharat. So in a sense, making sure that the bottom of the pyramid and the social harmony is maintained, bottom of the pyramid grows along with the growth of the economy. All these factors combined together is a growth story. If you look at in a very simple words, I would like to say all the foundations which are required for having a sustained growth are being set. The results are visible, and these will continue to be there for many years now.
Ashwini ji, let me ask you about public sector. Things that we don't often speak at these conferences. For the international delegates online and in the room, public sector are companies that are either owned by government or partially owned by government, where government has equity or management, etc. And for a while it was felt that they were the temples of modern India, then it was felt that they were a drag on the economy. So we've had sort of varying views. How do we prepare public sector, including those that you've been spearheading now very successfully and transformed some of them through investment? What is the role of domestic equity, sovereign funds, long-term capital in public sector space, especially given the view that some people think that we should come out of it, but there are some that are strategic. Can we sort of talk about that for a few minutes?
Yes, it's a very interesting set of discussion. See, we should look at public sector from the perspective of reality. I don't think we should have a very dogmatic or an ideological thing about any particular part of the economy. Economy is something which should be seen from the prism of reality, prism of what we have today, where do we want to go, how do we go there. That's the way of thinking I think we should have. Our public sector played a very important role in developing an industrial infrastructure in our country at the beginning of when our journey from the British period to our independence started. We must value that. We must value the ecosystem that they created, because that was the time when the private sector was not in a position to take the big, bold risks that only a government sector could have taken. Then there was a period where the initial phase of productivity went down. In the last 10 years, the way our Prime Minister has transformed the public sector is in 3 different ways. First, lot of focus on giving independence to the public sector, companies, and to the public sector per se. So let me give you an example of railways. Indian Railways, as you know, is among one of the largest railway networks in the world. We carry about 7 billion people every year. 7 billion is a large number. And about 1,600 million ton of cargo we will carry this year. So in a sense, among the top 2 systems in the world. With that kind of system and about 1.2 million employees, 1.2 million direct employees, and ecosystem itself will be about 10 million people who are connected with railways in terms of all kinds of services that they provide, all kinds of execution work that they do. So it's a very large ecosystem. Obviously, a large ecosystem will have huge challenges when you want to transform it. This is where Prime Minister's thinking can be given very clear examples. First, how the decision making was separated out of populist measures. So go back 10 years and the entire focus of railways would be, where do you start a new train service? Go back 10 years and most of the things that you would hear about railways would be practically negative. Come fast forward today, we hear that in last 60 years, 20,000 kilometers were electrified. Electrified basically the entire track network. Instead of running on diesel locomotives, you run it on electrical locomotives, much more cleaner, 90% less polluting, right? And in 10 years, 40,000 kilometers electrified. Imagine one of the largest networks is of Germany, that is about 35,000 kilometers. So electrifying equivalent of Germany's network in 10 years. Big task. That's possible because a lot of independence of decision making was given to the railway sector itself. You guys decide, this is the goal we have to achieve. You decide, make your plans, execute them. Last year we added 5,200 kilometers of new railway lines. That is like adding a Switzerland in India's railway network. This year we are adding 5,500 kilometers of railway lines. So adding one more Switzerland in the Indian railway network. Next year we'll be adding 6,000 kilometers. Year further we'll be adding 7,000 kilometers. Imagine the pace of work which is happening. World's largest station redevelopment program. 1,300 stations being rebuilt, not just cosmetic, but rebuilt. That's possible because Prime Minister has given absolute independence to the Railway Board. Make your decisions, plan your execution path, execute it with focus. Second, a lot of focus on investment. When you look at public sector investments, people look at risk from different perspective, whether there would be limitation on liability, whether there would be undue open risks which cannot be covered. And in what we understand, risk should be basically placed with the party which is best placed to handle that risk. So how do we divide the risks between the public sector and the private sector? Those kind of contractual structures are today in place. I can see huge amount of interest from multiple different types of vehicles, whether it is institutional investors, whether it is private equity, whether it is banking system. They are all investing very heavily in the physical and digital infrastructure sector companies, in the public sector units also. So the focus here is we transform the public sector units into making them agile, making them responsive to new technologies, making sure that they are significant players without in any way putting a negative impact on the growth of innovation which is happening. That's the way we are looking.
You've spoken about railways. In April this year, we'll complete 30 years of National Telecom Policy 94 completing. And in the last 10 years, those who don't know, when National Telecom Policy 94 was invited, there was less than one phone per 100 and only landlines. We are now at over 50% internet penetration, billion mobile phones, 750 smartphones, 6G stack. You've given the details on railways. Can I ask you to explain to our friends in the audience this mindset change of scale, of size, of chasing the best? So what drives that? What is behind that? Because this is the symbol of New India that most people would like to understand the thinking behind it.
Well, it's a direct reflection of the way our Prime Minister works. You go with this kind of achievement, he'll say, no, do this. You go with this, he'll say, do this. He always makes us think big. See, incremental changes can give us only so much result. Incremental is good if your base is very big. At our position of the economy, our point in which, in the journey of our development, we need to really take big risks. We need to take big calls. We really need to put huge amount of effort in executing those calls. And that's what Modi government is today known for. I'll give you one example from the telecom sector since you took up this point of telecom. Having our own telecom stack, end-to-end telecom technology, that was considered like next to impossible. For decades, we have been importers of telecom technology. Prime Minister gave us this challenge, can we develop the telecom stack the way we have developed the digital stack? And it took 2.5 years, 3 years to develop it. But today the telecom stack, 4G telecom stack, upgradable to 5G is ready. It is getting deployed today. And coming years, we would start exporting it. So this is something which was unthinkable. So one of my favorite quotations is, our Prime Minister says, mind is never a problem, mindset is. Mind is never a problem, mindset is. If we can change the mindset, so many things can change. If we can change a mindset towards doing bigger things, if we can change the mindset towards taking bigger risks, understanding those risks and then executing on those, I think we can achieve big.
So, Honorable Minister, there's 6 weeks before elections, or 7, depending on what the dates are, then another 6 weeks of elections, and then the government's back, and sort of the entire process begins again for a 5-year period, a very important period in India's journey and development. If you had to leave us with a message on what is it that the global audience and delegates should watch out for in the next 5 years, the vision that will be played out starting, say, June of 2024 for a 5-year period, what would that be?
There will be a lot of focus on manufacturing, and we should not look at manufacturing as services or manufacturing. We should look at services and manufacturing. There are certain experts who say that no, India should look at only services, should not look at manufacturing, but I think we should look at services and manufacturing. Within manufacturing, in the next 5 years, there will be a lot of focus on the entire spectrum of manufacturing. Not just, I don't think we should ever see as if whether it is low-end manufacturing or high-end manufacturing. We do need to have both. That is first part. Second part, there will be lots and lots of focus on upgrading our education system to a totally new level. The national education policy has been received very well. The execution has already started, but there will be a lot of focus on making sure that percolates down to the grassroots level and the education system really comes up to a new level. There will be lots and lots of focus on health sector and infusion of technology on health sector, which basically started with the way we managed our COVID challenge, the way we developed the vaccine, the digital mechanism of implementing the entire program. Ayushman is totally a digital platform. So there will be lots and lots of focus on technology in healthcare. And fourth, there will be huge amount of focus on developing some of the most important and critical technologies. And that we will do in partnership with the private sector, in partnership with national and international players, and in partnership with the trusted geographies that are with us. So there will be a totally new way of governance that we can see in the next 5 years. The next 5 years will be basically laying the foundation for becoming a developed country by 2047.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Minister, honest, detailed, succinct, and in line with Indian Railways' ambition, on time. We finished the time just in time for the next session. Thank you so much. Please join me in a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, and thank you so much, Mr.